What's up, everybody? Welcome again to this week's episode of the GJK podcast. Shout out to my man for a beautiful introduction, Swaki. As he said, we're broadcasting live right here in Maung. It's been a splendid few days of engaging with entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs that are doing business, both in terms of improving the community standards and the life of people in this part of the country. It's amazing how a lot of us living in the cities, our experiences of what we are seeing and how we don't think about how other people feel like to be living in the same country, but having a completely different experience of what the majority of the people are. So if you've never been to Maung, just imagine Las Vegas, maybe 100 years back, but just imagine the vibe and the structure and the positioning of Las Vegas. That's what you get to see how this metropolitan city of Botswana, Maung, looks like. And today we're going to be dealing with the issue of that's been making rounds all over social media, the strife between the taxi operators and the community of people that has been using the InDrive service. And people are calling government to account and saying, should the government of Botswana intervene, with policies and regulations to stop the operations of InDrive in the Republic of Botswana? And that's what the GJ's podcast today is going to be dealing with.
Hello, dumela Botswana ka lapeng ya me ha ke praise tea. Batho ke itumetse gompieno ko mo Maung ha ke ja ka le mpona ke le ha ke monyana mo go ba ke teng ga gore mo Maung re tsore ke sa le kutle gote GJK o mo Maung no tshwantse ke ko Maung lodge ka gote he go bukile sengwe se hitile ya no ga sa thole ke tsana te ya no be ke tsana mo shopis ha ke re mathole ba ke wana ke re la go tla gote yo ke GJK ke se nna khone ke ma ka motho mo dimite go pa gore ke tse senepe le wena ba nthare e kete pere ta itsa photo kontle ka go gompe ko ana ka ke bua lona ke ha ke na le ene ke mo tshware ka letsogo ntse ke follow page ya go tse tsore motho wa ntsho hatsa ke tsore ke rapela modimo a mo godise modimo a mo increase ke tsore ke itumetse mo go masa ke ha ke na mahoko a ka bua hela ke gore ke itumetse mo letsatsi la gompieno ke ta ja bo ipusa go monate. Thank you so much.
I think one of the most important part of this conversation, or maybe even the foundation of this conversation, is seeing how the relationship between the mobility of people and economic growth lies and ties together. And whether we look into history of where we come from as human beings and advancement in terms of how the speed at which we are able to move, the speed at which we are able to communicate, ties with every single thing that is out there that we want to achieve as human race. So I think, maybe even when we date back to where the mobility of people in terms of being moved from one part of the city to the other, whether to go and do a job or whether to do whatever, we can even go back as far as the 16s, the 1605, when I think if you watch movies like Sherlock Holmes, you would see how people in those movies, there was these carriages that were pulled by horses made of wheels of steel. And the problems and the challenges of the human race at that time, I think in those times as well, in this part of Africa, the way to move, you would have to use horses. So if somebody died and you were sent to go and tell the family members that they died, they would know a week later, and if they had to come for the funeral, that would take another week or two. So this shows you how long funerals will have to go. If you had to move, grain, food, all of that, solving problems of the world, it was slower and slower because of how people can actually move. You see, even when the Wright brothers came with the concept of saying, how can we make people move from continent to continent, city to city, on an aircraft, and people were saying to them, this is very impossible because you can't have a metal steel flying through the air. And it was so important to them because they know why it's important for human beings to move faster. And now, of course, moving, on the rail, Africans would know of the guys like Cecil John Rhodes and what they've done in connecting African countries. I know there's a lot of history around how they were being used, for colonialism and all of that, but that's not where we are. We are at the fact of saying goods and people had to move faster. And right now where we are in 2023, technology and everything else is connected into saying, how do we make sure that people move faster, cheaper, and better? And now, when in London, for example, when you look into the Industrial Revolution, when they started creating steam engines to push trains, to push cars, guys like Henry Ford that were part of the growth of the mobility of people brought cars into space. And because cars were there, now taxis could move people faster and better. Now people will no longer need to move to different cities to stay there and work. They would move from where they stay to go to work, and then they come back. And this is where the history of, taxis and cars, everything moved on. But I want you to start seeing it from this point. The reason we want to move faster and flexible and cheaper and more affordable is because it's far beyond the fact that you want to support an entrepreneur or you want to support any whatever thing. It's because there is a whole lot of elements that that has to come together to facilitate the reason why people have to want to participate in the economic growth of their country at that particular time. Now I want us to look at a few issues in order to understand why the people of Botswana wants the government to intervene in making sure that operations, internet and digital operations like InDrive don't operate in our communities. For context, for some of you who don't understand, is that a few days ago, it came on I saw it as a front page in all of the newspapers, and they were saying, how InDrive should stop operations. Now, this is not new to African people, and it's not new to Southern African people. A few years back, we saw how a technology company, Uber, which is the largest taxi business in the world, which was built out of the concept of saying, how do we make traveling easy? I think for some of you who know the story of how, Travis and Garrett, they were attending a conference in Paris, in France, and as they were there, there was a storm of some kind, and they realized that when you are stuck in this place, there's no way you can actually get a taxi that can come here, pick you and drop you to where you are going, without it having to be, a structured operations where, like we know it, to get a taxi, you have to go to the taxi rank. In our country, you have to be on the road, you have to be here, you have to have a number of one of them to call them to come and pick you up. I think this is also why cabs came into the space in Botswana, to say you don't have to actually ride an actual taxi. We can create another type of business that operates the same way, which is called the cab industry. And that's how many of them, I think most Botswana have been going into this, incredibly so. But the reason Uber existed was because these guys, two of guys, they realized, is it possible for us to, create a platform where when I'm here, I can just go on my cell phone and call for a cab, and it comes without necessarily having to use the actual obvious communication, technology of having to call somebody, because there is a limitation in this, because you have to know the person and you have to have the number of the person, and that number has to go through in order to talk to this guy. But with an application, what there is, this technology, artificial intelligence powered technology, is able to say to people who is available right now within my locality and can move me to a closer locality, and you can negotiate a fair price on how this can actually happen. And this is the same story that brought the invention of InDrive. I think a lot of people don't know this, but I'll tell you the story today. So what happened was, the taxi operators, just like in South Africa, when Uber went to South Africa, the taxi operators started to realize that, look, people are no longer coming to ride our taxis. And they started fighting because they realized, look, the Uber guys are actually, taking the people from us. And I've shared this story on air before, how personally there was a strike in the taxi operation. I was in Rustenburg, and I went to South Africa to get a few copies of my books, and I was carrying them on the back, and I hiked from Joburg until Rustenburg. So I find a taxi that has been there. I didn't know how long it was there. I found one lady in there, and then when I was there for almost an hour, and there's no one coming into the taxi, and I'm wondering, I need to catch time to get to Botswana. And when I got out, the guy wanted to fight me to get back into the car. And I realized there's something really going on here. I won't bore you with the details, but what I didn't know is I was now forced to find a way to get out of the harmful situation of dodging these guys, to go to a place a bus stop somewhere. When I got to the first bus stop, there were other taxi guys there beating people, you know, who would want to give you a lift. And this is where some of these technologies are important. Instead of having to meet the guy at the road to give you a lift, the technology says, why can't the guy come and pick you up at your house? So it's been a strife, it's been a fight, it's still ongoing. I think in some parts of Pretoria right now, many Uber, you know, drivers are in serious trouble. They get assaulted, and you know, if in South Africa it can go as worse as it can get. So right now, what is happening right now is the beginning of a larger conversation that has been going on all around many African countries between the usual commercial and, you know, conventional way of doing businesses. I buy a taxi, I put it under the bus rank, and you have to use it. Now, I'll tell you a story that I promised you. A few years back, and this is around 2011. So in 2011, 2012, in Russia, so it happened that the places were experiencing low temperatures. Just imagine, Russia by nature is cold. We're talking about -20 and -20. When last were you in a place with -20? But the temperatures dropped to -40 something. And because of the harsh climate conditions of that place, it was becoming extremely difficult for the taxi operators to wanting to brave such conditions to go and provide a service of transporting people. The people need to get to work, and the only way to do that is to move with the normal taxis. So in order for the taxi operators to say, how do we come up with a plan that makes it worthwhile for me to want to risk my life and to risk every element that is out there to give transportation services for somebody else? And they colluded together and say, maybe let's make it worthwhile by hiking the prices. Now, here's the thing. They are solving their problem, but they're making taxis extremely unaffordable. So this is where it came to. It say, now if you wanted to move with a taxi, say you were paying 20 pula for it. Now taxis were now hiked to 100 pula because of the conditions that are out there. So thank God for social media and the digital age of where we are. As we said, the industrial revolution, the internet of things. So the people of that community, they went on social media to rant all about what these all issues are all about. Everybody sharing their experiences. And now this is the beautiful thing that happens, because InDrive started as an act of justice. They said we are all in this situation. The taxi operators should not want to do it this way when they're leaving us out of the equation. So it started with people to say, guys, I am sorry and so, I stay in this place, I'm going to this place. Case in point, say you stay in Pakalani and you work in phase 4, and you would post, I'm in Pakalani, I go there every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at this time. So the people within your locality would make an offer on social media, pick me up, I'll pop you up. We do this all the time. So that's how it all began. And this is around 2011, 2012. And then in 2013, they said, why don't we actually create an actual platform, an application where, you know, ordinary citizens who are going the same directions as other people can be given an opportunity to say, I pledge to give somebody a ride, and that person will also pledge their own offer of saying how much can they afford to travel on all of that. Now, if you coin that with what we are used to, that's happening in the Republic of Botswana, you want a cab, the price of the cab is determined by the cabman. And I've seen this, as people that stay in Tlokweng, somebody will say, I'm picking you from River Oak, and you're dropping them on the other side of the bridge, which is like 200 meters away. They will charge you the same price that they will charge somebody that are picking from Game City all the way to the end parts of Tlokweng, kilometers apart, because you are going to another village. So if in this case, people are charged 30 pula to ride on a taxi, other people are experiencing the worst kind of its kind, where they have to pay 70 pula, 80 pula for a 30 seconds drive. So, and then as it gets darker and late, like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, the prices are not standard, because it's the elements, the risk that the taxi man has to go through, the cab man has to go through in transporting you. I think you know the cases that how some of the cab people have gotten killed and all of that because of that. It's a high risk, and that's why the prices are going up. Now, where we are now, we are finding a situation where in the Republic of Botswana, there's a technology that has been used. As you know, Uber does not operate here. So people ordinary citizens were able to create another stream of income. I think I also asked this question on my social media before of how people could make, I put it, I said, how can you make a 1,000 pula easy? And people, majority of the people, they said, I listed my car on InDrive. And per day I could make like 500 up to 1,000. So this is a person that's working during the day, but they're able to make all of this. But the beautiful thing here is not only from the side of the business, it's the consumer side of the business. People are now able to ride faster, cheaper, and better. And that's the beauty of the technology. But now who is feeling the pain? The taxi operators. And this is why we're here now to talk about this question, to say, should government then intervene? And if it was to, how exactly should it do that?
A refreshing breath of fresh thinking.
So I think it's very important that we now take a closer look into the perspective of government in seeing how they see themselves, in this growing gig economy, and whether or not they like it. This is one of the fundamental challenges of government, is that they realize that as the economies that they want to grow and technology is powering that growth, technology also demands that we disrupt the way we've been doing a lot of different things. I think from policy, from regulation, from what we are used to saying, this is how things are done, the government continually finds itself in a place where they're saying, should we or shouldn't we allow this? And what is the basis of our agreement on whether we should or we should not? It's not new. We've seen it with the Bitcoin economy when it was growing. And people were saying, why should we go through federal banks in order to make transactions? And right now is the current big problem in Africa, because right now you can't do business with another African person in another African continent, a country, in the same continent, because of the same laws and the structure of our economies. And this is why Bitcoin says, you don't even need to know the guy, you don't even need to be in the same place. The government doesn't even need to be involved. I can just send you money, pay for your service. And the consumer will say, that's what I want, because I've been struggling a whole lot of times to make financial transactions. But the government is saying, hey, you can't do business in my country, and I don't even have some level of control, or at least something that gives me the pleasure of knowing that if something was to go wrong, and I can be able to save my people. It's like a paradox. It's like, how do we create a peaceable, environment that people can do trade? Right now, Botswana's greatest, advantage in attracting foreign direct investment is one single line in all our statements, that Botswana is a peaceful country. And that is literally a thing that makes Botswana to be an outstanding country when investors all around the world are making a decision on whether or not they should come and make their investments here. Because questions are, if I put my money in the Republic of Botswana, will it be safe? If I start my company in Botswana, will it be safe? If I send my people over to come and live in Botswana, will they be safe? And what is this saying? This is exactly what the government has to do, has to give the promise first to the citizens of Botswana, to say, whatever we will allow to come to do business in our country, you should be able to trust it, because we as government, is our role through our laws, through our law enforcement agencies and all these platforms, to ensure that our intelligence is of top notch and we can protect you from people that may want to cause you harm. But then again, the government has a responsibility of saying, how do they grow the way of doing this? I think even in the medical field, we've seen it. We've been saying this for years. Why do I always have to carry a physical card to go to a hospital, that if I don't have it in another city, I can't be assisted because the guy has no access to my medical records? And now it's happening with the Ministry of Health saying, we have digitized the platform. But to digitize again, it poses a different type of risk of saying, is our data safe? Is our price points okay? All of that. So it's like you have to in fact, you have to balance this by juxtaposing every element. Say, if I do this, then what about this? Now, where the government is finding themselves in here is the rampant, and the growing unemployment, especially amongst our youth. the way salaries are structured in terms of minimum wage, and then also in terms of how people can actually afford. Either way, the government has citizens that are finding ways to make other money in ways that they can. Again, the government of Botswana has the responsibility to ensure that the transport services and the transport solutions are growing to meet the needs of the people. But the way to do this is that solutions are not only coming from the Republic of Botswana, because on the outside and also even in the digital space, there's a globalization of everything. We're talking about value chains right now. And when we were at the US Africa Summit, the question was, how do we grow African value chains to be able to be at par with the global value chains? And when we're talking about the transport and technology on digital value chain, this is where the digital economy that I said before, it has powered the gig economy. If you don't know what a gig economy is, it's simply put, I give you a gig or a job to do something for me because I need you now to do this. And I pay you for what you've done at that particular moment, and you can go. This automatically disrupts what we are used to do. For example, the gig economy can power accountants to say, instead of hiring you to be my accountant for the year and I pay you a salary, you can actually come and work for me for the next 30 minutes to do what you do. So what does this do? It means now you are allowing a citizen to, instead of earning 10,000 people in salary for doing the same job for the same company, you are transforming everything to say, as an accountant, you have to change the way you think, your mindset, and saying, don't think employment because that box in one place. When you're saying think entrepreneurship, you are saying think the gig economy. Instead of being an accountant as an individual to a company, have a company that's an accountant to many companies. Now, what's happening now in the US is companies like WeWork, it's a platform where, as a freelancer like yourself, you're a graphic designer, you can do content, you can do all of that. Somebody can go on that platform, give you the gig, and you do your job, and then you pay them. That's it. Now, here's the beautiful part of it. Botswana, everyone else around the world are able to make money out of that. And the same thing is what's happening right now in the transport services. People are able to give another person a gig to do a job. What is the job? Come and take me to where I'm supposed to go. But then again, because you are a citizen, the government has so many different issues, and I'm going to go one by one by some of those as quickly as I can get. Number one, issues of regulation. The government, as I said, needs to have some level of control over how all these businesses are doing business. Because one, the trade laws of what companies can do, it also ties with how people can trust the Republic of Botswana in terms of doing business. We've been grey listed a lot, there's money laundering, there's all of these things. So the government still has to make sure that they have some law that regulates to say this is how much you can charge. If this happens, this must happen. So that when you as a consumer, right now everything is going well with this company, but if something was to happen to you because of this company, can you go to the court somewhere, or can you go to some place where you can say, this is what's happened to me, and now you want the government of Botswana to help you in getting justice from what you've experienced? Now the government says, if you want me to be able to do that for you, I must firstly have a law or a regulation, something that this company has to comply with, and I have to give them some kind of a licensing, something that they can sign together, and we say, if you do this in our country, we will do this to you. And number two, I should be able to know who you are, where you are, so that when this thing happens, I know who I'm dealing with. But if it's just some app and technology is just there in the air or in this internet space, I have no idea what I'm going to be dealing with. This has happened a lot of times with economists. You pay something and then it doesn't come. You can't go to police and say, hey, I bought a dress in this website and then they took my money. And who are you reporting? Where are they going to find them? They have no jurisdiction over that guy, and your money is gone. But the government doesn't want this to happen to you. Number two, the issue of taxation. This is, as we said, a company that was founded in Russia. And I think it was in June of last year, 2022, and when some of the rights of the companies just went ahead. Right now, most people, when you research what InDrive is, you find that it's an American company right now. And now is all the money that you are paying on InDrive right now, where does it go? Yes, part of it pays the driver, but the profits is, remember, the government grows on taxes. Every single piece of trade that's been happening has to contribute to the taxes of the country, because you know what taxes do. BURS has been collecting so much money and has been responsible for some of the developments that we are seeing, diversifying our income as a country. I think taxes make a lot of money and makes a huge money, almost at par with the diamonds. So if the government is unable to tax the businesses that are doing businesses here, then it's losing so much money, and they don't want to do that. And if you are a citizen, also you probably wouldn't want to see that happening, in your country. Now, there is also issues of labor rights and employment rights and all of that. You as a driver, if you were to find something that is not so cool with this company that you're working in, you should be in a position where you can get the government to help you to, to deal with some of the labor issues that you have. But as long as they don't have any control in this company, the government is extremely worried and saying, am I able to save you now, the business operator in this thing that's being employed by this company, gig, whatever? Are you safe as a driver in the Republic of Botswana? Right now, Uber it doesn't even know what to do. Drivers in South Africa, if they get murdered because of operating like this, because of the taxi, the strive and all of that, they can't protect them. The government also can't do anything about it. You get what I'm saying? Let's move forward real fast with this one. Consumer safety is the one I want to talk about it. What happens if a customer who's in the InDriver cab gets kidnapped by an InDriver driver? How about, what if somebody knows that you use InDrive and they are looking for you and they are within your location, they are standing there on an app waiting for you to press to say, I'm looking for a driver, and they accept your offer and they give you something you agree, they take you and they move with you? How safe are you? What can the government do to protect you or this kind of things from happening? Because no one else can. It has to be the role of the justice system of the Republic of Botswana to be able to do that. So, fair competition, I think we've talked about this here. It's extremely fair. We can't even debate it. That you are no longer given a standard price to say pay this much. We can negotiate. I think most of us love this platform for that. But there's all of these different, factors to say, but if this is what we want, but what other element does it pose? So this is where we are at. Now, I think these are most of them. I think there's also issues of data privacy. You sign up on these guys. What do they do with the data? They know where you're going, they're uploading, they know this guy always makes this route and all of that. What is the danger that is being posed by somebody who has a digital footprint of all of your movements? And their data centers are not based here in the Republic of Botswana. The government does not even have access. Not even you. You don't even have access to your own data. They have it. I think a lot of us, especially me, I've had a long time not understanding what's important about my data. You have my name and I don't even care. But in the US, it's a big thing when somebody, like companies like Facebook has gone into problems in this because they were asked, what do you do with the data of the people that are in your platform? Some of us will be like, but we don't even care what we post on Facebook, what do you do with it? But for us, it's like, this guy is collecting way more information about you than you know. So the government also has to come up with a data protection system within these platforms. I'm not only talking about InDrive, everything else that's gonna come from other countries into Botswana to operate. The government needs to have some level of control on some of these things. I think I'll talk about this, political influence, all of them. But I think right now you get the gist of it. Like right now, the government is not looking only at the issue of saying, so taxi operators InDrive, and they're like, okay, this one is not local. But then again, if you maintain with the taxi as it is, the problems that the consumers, who are the citizens of Botswana, that they're facing because of how the taxi and the transport service has been structured, is also a very growing problem. I think if the citizens want to punish the government for this, sooner or later they'll be able to do it. But how do you give the people what they want, which is the ability to move faster, cheaper, and better, flexibly because of what is growing as technology as we are seeing it? How do we enable that and participate, as we've been saying, government has been saying digitalization, we're talking about mindset change, we're talking about value chain development, we're talking about supply chain growth, we're talking about citizen involvement, we're talking about growth of technology and all of that. But are we going to say we're going to go back into the way taxis has been operating because we're afraid of this? Or does this now pose another opportunity for saying isn't maybe time Botswana creates its own platform? And the question also would be, is it even necessary for us to have our own app that we can all use? Because this is a case study already. The people are ready to use an application that can connect them to a driver. And now the question that's coming out of everybody is, now, if the government was to say, we're closing doors on InDrive in Botswana, what will influence such a decision? I will leave that to you to think about it.
With manje kutsafalo, a refreshing breath of fresh thinking.